What's up? It's Mike Mal, and you are listening to the Athletor podcast, where we dive into the processes, mindsets, strategies of some of the most successful athletes and coaches from all walks of life. Athletor podcast, Brock Hardy this week. This dude is an absolute treasure trove of information, both technical, recruiting, and even some of the stuff that he talks about in the room and some of the doubts that he may have had in himself is completely mind-blowing, at least to me. You're not going to believe who he puts on his Mount Rushmore of wrestling either. All that and more coming up on the podcast. Don't go nowhere, man. Hey, everyone knows that wrestling is 90% mental. We're super excited to have partnered with Wrestling Mindset, the #1 wrestling-specific mindset program in the world. Make sure to sign up at WrestlingMindset.com using promo code Athletor25 for a $500 discount. Stop underperforming and losing to guys that you should beat. Athletor Podcast coming at you. Brock Hardy, thank you very much for spending some time with us today.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, we got a lot. I've been following your career since you were in high school, and you first came on my radar when you were in high school, and I remember going to Reno TOC, and you were I call it an Abbas snap, and just Abbas
Yeah.
snapping people. I know where it came from, or at least I have a good idea. But I want to know how, because that looks so simple. It looks so simple. You just snap them and grab the hip, right? No, there's a tremendous amount of feel. It took me the better part of 5-6 years to be able to do that. Where did you learn how to get that type of feel off a collar tie? And can you teach it?
Okay, so the first time I so I didn't have a coach teach me it. I remember I watched David Taylor it was a Penn State Iowa duel. It must have been his sophomore or junior year. And he kind of hit like some version of it that I was like, how did he just all of a sudden was behind the guy? And I was like, okay, that was cool. I kind of want to try that. And then I mean, after that, I was like playing with it a lot in practice. And, I would say probably I got the feel from it just from being able to play a lot in practice with it. And then on top of that, being in Utah, the level of competition wasn't quite as high. So I got to try it in live matches. And I just started to kind of feel it and feel like there was more of a pressure thing. Like once you feel them kind of pushing into you in a certain way, you shuck them by. Um,
Yeah. Can you teach it though?
I can, but this is something that I feel like sometimes I struggle with big time when it comes to teaching. Specifically, like I think I could get like a guy on the college team to do it.
Sure.
But like helping someone understand the feel of like, it's just, you're pushing in, you let them go. So I feel like, do I name it a certain thing to help someone understand? Like, so I was like, I called it an Olay for a while in the sense that
Mhm.
like you want the pressure, you want it moving into you, get out of the way. I kind of think about skipping a stone with your hand.
Those are
So
the exact same things that I use. Like, and one of the most difficult parts for me in teaching, and not just that, but just feel in general, is like explaining to them that your hands, elbows, forearms, to a certain degree, your head is like a pressure plate. And like,
yeah,
let's say the person in front of you weighs exactly 100 pounds, knowing when there's 80 pounds of pressure on you, knowing when there's 20 pounds of pressure on you, knowing what you can do with that. Those things are so hard. Let me rephrase it as a question. Do you remember when you started to get it?
yes and no. I mean, I will say like I feel like there's a lot of aspects of it that came from just doing the sport so much, right? Like being
Mhm.
able to like play with the sport so much and you kind of come upon it naturally, but then like retroactively you think about it and you're like, I started to really feel this thing.
Hey, don't go anywhere. It's Mike. We'll get back to the podcast in just a second. We got to pay the bills though. Do you have an athlete that's looking to break into the social media space? We at athletorlive.com have a brand new in-depth tutorial done by none other than Caden Henshaw. If you don't know who Caden is, he's not even a Division I wrestler, yet he's got hundreds of thousands of engaged followers. Learn how to create engaging content, grow your followers, and open up new opportunities in the NIL space. Go to athletorlive.com/Caden and we'll give you the first module completely free.
Started to really feel this thing during this time.
Mm.
I remember kind of like a flip going off at one point and just being like, oh, like wrestling is not just doing moves, but learning how to like manipulate the other person a little bit, how to, manipulate, how their body's reacting. And yeah, I mean, every other sport uses every form of sense, right? Like in the sense of like
Mm.
your eyes should be calculating and seeing stuff as it's happening. In other sports, you're hearing things, even in wrestling, maybe a little, but wrestlers need to be so wary of like, he's touching me in a certain way. That's
Right.
something.
No, I know. I think we all
Yeah,
get it.
he's
Listen,
pushing into me in a
listen. There's
certain
nobody
way.
listening to this that didn't wrestle. They get
Yeah.
it.
He's pushing into me in a certain way that, okay, I can react a certain way. And so, yeah, I can't remember a specific time, but I definitely feel like it's like kind of like walking through uh like a misty room in this or like a fog that it's like you kind of see it little by little by little as you grow in the sport.
You know, it's funny, man. I just spent last weekend up in Utah with Kyler.
Hmm.
He does an incredible job of teaching feel. It has been like I'm not kidding when I say it's basically been my life's work trying to convey the manipulation, as you said, of pressure and how like but getting kids, especially kids that are, see, here's the problem that I've found, and you tell me if I'm wrong. The kids that want to win really, 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 really bad sometimes have the worst feel, the worst, because they're always like, ah, okay, I'll take for an example. You wrestled a kid who may or may not become a Husker here soon. Um, uh, in the world team trial, in the world team trials, and he's just diving at your leg. Now, granted, he's a high school kid. He probably doesn't understand that stuff yet, but you're just chest wrapping him all over the map because he's getting extended trying to get to your legs. And the more he goes down by 6, the more he's going to do it again. How do we, and I know it's the answer is just wrestle, right?
Yeah.
But is there, and is there a way, is there a way to expedite the process? Yeah, you have to wrestle, but is there a way to make it a little faster?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you talked about being with Kyler, and obviously he was my club coach for my last couple years of high school. I feel like the for a long period of time, like wrestling's idea of how to get better was, we'll just do it harder, right? Like, or, you know,
So, still for a lot of people, but go
yeah,
ahead.
for a lot of people, it's, we'll just do it harder, Um, even sometimes, well, I'm trying to do this high crotch. And there is an example, there's an aspect of wrestling where it's like, yeah, it's a fight, you just have to do it, right? Like you're gonna have to like take it from the other person. But I also feel that there is an aspect of like, you know, you're grabbing, the bull by the horns in a wrestling match and you're trying to manipulate this person, but it's like you're not I like to think about wrestling being water-like in the sense that like I am not gonna force, I'm not gonna be able to pull Jesse Mendez's head down all the time, right? And at some point, he's gonna pull my head down. And so it's like you have to learn that there's always two ways of things and of reactions to things. And so it's so hard because there's so many different elements of wrestling that it's like sometimes you need to force it and other times you need to take what's given.
Mm,
And so I feel like
interesting.
maybe the learning process for some wrestlers can be that, they need to not necessarily learn how to force it or learn how to, to let it happen, but rather learn how to balance your wrestling, learn how to know what is right for you.
Man, decision making in the moment becomes paramount paramount. So many kids, and it's not. I'm talking about Bo, obviously. Everybody knows that, but it's not just him, right? My son, we call it panic shooting. When he gets in a tizzy, right? When he somebody starts pulling on him and he doesn't like the hand fight, he dives in at their legs. I'm like, that is royally dumb. Like that
Yeah.
is royally dumb. Boy,
Yeah.
is that a dumb idea.
Yeah, no, I mean, so that's the thing with Bo is I think that his his style of wrestling, is, very much so like I am going to smother you and I'm going to attack you. And that is very successful. But I think that, as he grows as a wrestler, as he works out with more people, as he, has different coaches, you'll see, Messenbrink's kind of that way in the sense that it's very, very smothering, but he's grown, you know.
Mm,
I
hmm.
think that, Bo has been so far ahead of everyone else that
Sure.
maybe he hasn't had to reflect. And so I think, you know, losing is some of the greatest things that can happen to people. And I think that, I worked out with him when he was on our recruiting trip, and I can already tell that since our match, he's already starting to kind of, put these pieces together of what he needed to fix.
Yeah, look, and I'm not trying to take anything away from that kid because if you look at the growth that he's made since his world title as a cadet, I
Yeah,
mean, he's a different dude. Physically, yes, of course, but also in terms of wrestling. Okay, I do want to talk about your recruiting process, if we could.
of course.
Tell me what the recruiting process was like. There's a little bit of a caveat too. You went on a mission for a year, so that throws a small little monkey wrench into like the conversations that you have to have with college coaches. But just give me an overarching idea of what your recruiting process was like going to Nebraska.
Yeah, so, I was just before the rules changed, so I couldn't speak with coaches until start of my junior year, couldn't take visits till my senior year. Um, and I did have, a very early on, I knew that I was going to serve, a 2-year mission. And so it was like, and I think that some of the coaches knew because they would ask me, hey, are you going on a mission sort of thing? And, I would let them know. And there was definitely coaches and within the recruiting process that they were like, well, nice knowing you, like
Hmm.
we're not willing to kind of work through that. And then essentially the schools that I came down to the schools that were willing to work with me on it and
Hmm.
that seemed like in a way that they had a plan for it, right? Like,
Hmm.
because that's a huge part of it. I worked a lot with, NC State was huge on my list and Nebraska were huge on my list. And I'll just use those two as an example. As,
Sure.
Adam Hall had been around,
He's an
Mormon
Idaho kid, right?
Idaho kid, wrestled at
Yeah.
Boise State with Hogstrasser, who served a mission, and a bunch of other guys on that team. And so he had a plan,
Hmm.
and that was really cool. But his plan was you come here, wrestle for a year, then go on your mission. And Nebraska's plan was we want you to go do your thing, and you can come back, and we have we'll work it out then. The thing about Nebraska was, I felt like the recruiting process was I could have chosen, I think, all of the places and been very content and happy. So it came down to like what filled the most boxes, and I felt like Nebraska was that. Um, I really liked Coach Manning. I really liked Coach Snyder. At the time, Coach Maple was here, and I loved him. It's somewhat close to home. It's
Sure.
kind of as close as you.
Sure. No, I mean, there's nothing close to Utah. Let's be
Yeah,
honest, right? There's
yeah,
just not. But
yeah,
if in terms of like if you're just looking to spitball map, yeah, it's closer.
yeah. Closer, and it's in the Big Ten.
Sure.
That was huge. And then, you go into a practice room and you see Jordan Burroughs and you see James Green, and you see, the Tyler Burgers and
Mhm.
these guys, and you want to be a part of it. And so that was huge.
So, okay, I want to kind of get into the nitty gritty of you said it kind of checked all the boxes. Well, at what point do you sit down and with whom do you sit down? And when do you make those boxes?
Yeah, that is a great question. I think I mean it's just like the boxes probably came from, talking with my dad as well as my coaches, right? So I was definitely blessed to have Kyler and as well as I mean, if I'm being real, the whole state of Utah helped me out. with
Sure,
making my decisions. Kyler was my club coach for the last 2 years. I was also under a club under Ben Care. I swear, wrestled in every single wrestling room in the state of Utah.
sure.
I was talking to everyone about, what you think I should do. And there's a lot of differing opinions, and I think that the boxes came from these conversations with them as well as with my parents. And so like one of them was, I have to go somewhere that first and foremost felt like the right place in terms of, spiritual wise, right? Like
Mhm.
I was very spiritual relatedly person, so I wanted to go somewhere where it felt right, and I feel like that's a hard box to check, for someone, but if you know, you know.
Mhm.
I think other aspects were academics. They were huge for me. I actually committed to Nebraska because of a program that I'm no longer in, which is funny because you grow up, but um,
Right.
you
Because,
grow up and you change what you want to do. But it was huge at the time. I was like, hey, I want to do this in agriculture. Nebraska has a great program, so I should go there. And I'm no longer.
right, but that doesn't matter. The point is, at that point in time, it was
Yeah,
important and it was a box. Like my
exactly.
son is, for some reason he got on this 6 month kick where he wanted to do what was it, Joel, that your sister does?
Marine bio.
Marine bio. Yep.
Joel's sister is the only cat that I've ever heard of in the history of dudedom or femaledom that has ever majored in marine biology. I just don't know one. So that's okay, man.
All
Okay.
right.
Like
It's
I'm looking
yours.
at him like, they're right. Good
Yeah.
luck, but yeah, it's a box though, right? What else? What other boxes did you think of?
Another one of the boxes was, and this is something that was another huge thing, is that um I wanted to feel so like for example, I was getting recruited by NC State. Academically, I had really good grades, but they were up front. They're like, hey, like there's no such thing as academic aid. Like you got to be
Hmm,
24 on the ACT to get
sure.
academic stuff here. And I was like, okay. And that wasn't necessarily a big problem, but
But it's a thing.
yeah, it's a thing. And so this thing is, so I was getting offered full rides, but I was also thinking in the back of my head, like, I want to go somewhere where I can be a benefit to my team in the sense
Mhm.
that, I did do all this work academically. Nebraska, I could essentially be on full ride. So I was on a specific scholarship that was academic, and then whatever isn't covered by academic, the rest is covered. And midway through my career, that expired, and so now, essentially was back on a full ride. But for 3 or 4 years of my career here at Nebraska, I was not a burden in the sense of like money. And so that was something that I was thinking like I want to help them out and, be, you know,
Oh,
not
that's interesting. Can I pause you there? I'm sorry. Because I wonder, I wonder if the 2 years that you took off expanded your mind enough. Because I got to tell you, most kids are not thinking in those directions. Okay. Most high school seniors do not concern themselves with the finances of a specific wrestling team. They just don't. It's really thoughtful, and I say that in the word in the terms of like it's you're putting thought into it. Where did you even learn that stuff? Like I don't know if I would have known that as a high school. I definitely wouldn't have known that as a high school senior. Like, how do you understand the checks and balances as a or I guess as a 20-year-old?
So I think so. I was actually it was before I'm committed to Nebraska that so it was when I was just a senior. But I think it came from so I had an older brother who wrestled at Utah Valley, and I have a brother-in-law that wrestled at Utah Valley, and my brother was on like a similar academic scholarship that I was on here that it was like it covered half of his tuition, um, and I remember he would like tell me about stuff, but I remember seeing kind of like there would be guys that go to UVU on full ride, and then you know, it's like, well, now we can't go get another guy, or I yeah, I think maybe it was just the aspect of being
Well, that's
around.
interesting. That's interesting in and of itself because having been near Provo, you kind of got a glimpse of like this is a microcosm of maybe not the budget that Nebraska has. Okay, let's let's
Yeah.
it's not apples to apples, but you got a little microcosm of, oh, there's like constraints and like they don't they would love to get every kid there a full ride, but that's just not practical. That's
Yeah.
really, really insightful, man.
Yeah. And so I think like in a way is like, I grew up on uh I grew up on a farm and I've spent time kind of like, I feel like that matures you a little bit more than most. And so I got to think like I don't want to be a burden to Nebraska, especially where I'm taking 2 years off. And so
Mhm.
I wanted to be in a situation where I was not only going to be uplifting in my wrestling, but also, uplifting in the sense that, hey, we have this guy who's really, really freaking good, and he's actually only taking up half a scholarship for us. So that was
Yeah, that's valuable.
obviously that wasn't like a deal breaker because I
No, but it's a
could have gone to
thing,
a
and
couple of
it's one of those
schools.
boxes, man.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it was like, and well, I wanted to go somewhere that, was going to compete for titles and compete for trophies. And you know I think that was huge. um and I think also like as mature as it was, I in a way like I was being a sissy because in the sense that I was thinking, I what if I go on full ride and I'm a full ride at this school and then I'm not good, and then I'm have like the mental stress of like I'm taking up a lot of money but I'm not good at wrestling. And so I guess in a way that
It's
was
fair. Okay.
that, which I don't know if other kids are thinking about that, but I guess you there's especially going on a mission, there's no guarantee that you stop wrestling for 2 years that you'll be good at wrestling when you get back.
Where did you go?
I went to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil.
Oh, did you roll
Yeah,
jiu-jitsu at all?
got to one time, and then my mission president said that I couldn't do it again in case I got hurt.
Yeah, they did. They're okay. Um, so you couldn't train at all.
No, so I mean I had 30 minutes of exercise a day is what I was allowed.
Wow. That's wild, man. That is wild. Okay. So let's fast forward to the mission's over. You call Snyder Manning and be like, "Hey, I'm cool. Let's go."
Hmm.
And that's it?
Well, yes, I mean, so I actually kept in contact during my mission that we would, have these, we'd talk back and forth. While I was on my mission, Maple, who's huge in recruiting me, left to go to Missouri. So I had that, I had like kind of like, let's say like an emergency conversation, but like, hey, this is going on, this is what's happening, and they were kind of up front, which is cool. And then COVID was why I came home. So I was supposed to serve 2 years. I had to come home a month early because of COVID. Um, and I got home from COVID, and my dad was like, all right, you've been off for 2 years. He went and everyone else is locked down. My dad was close enough with the high school coach that he took some of the wrestling mats, put it in one of our barns, and then I had a buddy, Stockton O'Brien, who moved up for a month and a half, and we just wrestled every day, trying to get me back in shape and back into wrestling shape. So,
What
I
was
mean,
the
COVID
Go
was a
ahead.
blessing.
Yeah, oh, for sure. What was the first thing to go and the last thing to come back,
Um,
wrestling wise?
yeah, yeah. So like, I would say the first thing that like started to come back immediately was like you know, just the simple mechanics of wrestling, right? Like collar tie, push pull, the same stuff that, comes pretty early to kids. The last thing that came back was not anything to do with wrestling. It was, kind of the, I mean, we'll call it an edge, was a certain level of competitiveness that I
Hmm.
lost. I spent 2 years not competing, not thinking about being better than everyone else, not thinking about being selfish, but thinking about like, oh, how can I help
Serving.
this person? Oh, I need, this, you know, there's a certain level of selfishness and meanness that's required to be competitive, to be good at wrestling specifically. You have to look across the mat and say, I don't care that you want to be, that you want to win this match, that you want to be an All-American. I'm gonna take that from you. And
Mm,
that took a long time to kind of get back because it's not something that I thought that I needed to return, right? Like it's not something that no one told me that before my mission that hey, when you come back, you're gonna have to you
You're gonna
know,
have to find your snarl again.
yeah, exactly. That was the hardest thing. And that took like 2 years to really get back.
Is that right? When
Yeah.
do you remember it kind of clicking back like, oh, I'm gonna whoop this guy?
Yeah. So I wrestled that first COVID year, like a couple matches, the year that didn't count, right?
Mm,
We had 7 matches and Big Tens NCAs. And then I redshirted. And I remember it's hard to do that during a redshirt year. I mean,
yeah.
you hear a lot about red shirts that, and I was hurt for part of my redshirt year. I remember Chad Red just kicking my butt, and me just kind of taking it, rolling over. Um, and I remember, I probably props to Ridge for this, is that Ridge had just taken second. 41 was clearing out in a way because you had Nick Lee graduate, you had Chad graduate, you had Seabass graduate, and Ironman. So this is kind of like the big four, and they're all left, and so people were, talking with Ridge, and Ridge was like, oh, I'm gonna go down to 41. And I just spent the year redshirting, getting my weight down to be a 41 pounder. And so then that summer into the preseason, I remember it, he already beat me out of the spot at 149 my COVID year. And so it was kind of like this, like, I gotta, either I roll over for Ridge or I get a chip on my shoulder at this point. And, you know, definitely like some of the hardest I've trained and like a certain level of like, I became a little psychotic, a little, what's the word? Like,
Obsessed. Let's call it
yeah,
obsessed.
I got a little
Better
upset.
connotation.
Yeah. And then, Ridge ended up not being able to make the weight just because of the hydration of it. And he was just too big for 41. And so it never came to fruition. So I spent the whole summer thinking about killing Ridge and thinking about how I needed to win the spot. And then, it helped kind of bring back a certain level of, okay, this is how I need to be to compete.
Well, it seems to have served you, that's for sure. Stylistically, one of the things that I love about Nebraska is you can't put your finger on a style at all. Up and down your lineup. You don't wrestle anything like Ridge, and Ridge doesn't wrestle anything like Entrell, and like there's just so much diversity. Was that something that you kind of looked at, as you were in your recruiting process?
I mean, 100%, because I feel like I've always kind of fit into, oh, I guess I've never fit into a box in a way,
Mm,
right?
I agree.
And so I've always had to, I didn't want to go anywhere that felt like I was going to get pigeonholed into doing a certain thing. And it was actually funny because I felt like that first COVID year, I felt like I was getting pigeonholed a little bit. And I
How
just think,
so?
at the time, the coaches that were kind of coaching me, I think that they were thinking, you are coming off your mission. This is what you need to do, right? And it was kind of like, we're gonna make you like this person, or we're gonna kind of, you know, we need you to get up and through guys, and we need you, work on, this and this, and get your body harder and stuff like that. And there's some of that is true, but I remember there was a specific conversation. Tervel Delagnev gets hired, and I was talking about how, I just don't, I want to do these things. And Tervel was like, well, why don't you just do them? And I remember being like, oh, I can do that. Like you'll let me kind of do my own thing a little bit. And so, I think that we have a perfect mix right now with the coaches in the sense that, you know, none of our four coaches, now five, wrestle alike at all. And at the time, it was Manning when I first got here during that kind of like that weird time was Manning, Snyder, Berger, and they all kind of have more of a similar mindset of wrestling. So I think that might have been kind of what was happening is you need to wrestle a little bit more like JB, a little bit more athletic, blow through guys. And I don't have that. Like that's not me. That's not what I got in me. And so then add addition of Tervel, an addition of James, and now Kokesh, now they're helping me in every way.
Yeah,
And that was huge. I want to wrestle like Brock Hardy. And I'm gonna try to mimic some other guys, and
of course.
I'm gonna try to replicate James in some ways, but I cannot wrestle like James all the time.
No.
Not many
Not,
people can
not,
actually.
I was just gonna say, not many people have that in them. Um, did you grow up as a student of the sport in ways of like, I can remember when I was a kid, back in the early 30s, getting your hands on the world championships was tough. It was tough. But now, like I find myself, some of these kids are like, "Yo, did you see what Ono did? What about Musakaya?" Like all this stuff. You were kind of on that cusp where you could see some international wrestling. It was a little bit harder to find then, but there's definitely a lot of it on there now. Did you grow up as a real student of the sport?
I would say in some ways yes, but not. I mean, I definitely think I could have been done more. I remember I would watch the big stuff, and I feel like this is kind of how I am for all sports. I love to um oh my goodness, I'm thinking of a word, but I can't think of the exact word for it. I like to, I'll check the scores. I
Mhm.
want to keep updated. Sometimes I don't watch everything, but you know, I feel like my biggest thing is I like to, if I'll see it, I want to do it. I want to do the thing. I want to
Mhm.
feel the thing out. And so I would watch the Olympics. Um, but I definitely wasn't watching all of the world stuff. I was watching a lot of the college stuff. Um, I feel like I was more like obsessive of like certain people, right? Like I watched a lot of David Taylor. I watched a lot of Jason Nolf. I want to kind of replicate what those guys are doing. But yeah, I was more of the type that like my student aspect was not, necessarily watching film, but rather, you know, being on a mat and playing and playing and playing.
That's interesting. So you kind of brought up David and David's and Jason too, very offensive wrestlers, extremely offensive wrestlers. So I can see that in your wrestling for sure. You have that aspect where you can go and get a leg and get it off the ground and finish quite well. But I think, and I don't know if the word is underrated, but I think an undervalued part of your game is your defense. Like I guess what I'm trying to ask you is it's not very common to have someone who is high offense but also can scramble through so many different positions comfortably. How do you develop that? Because like it's usually one or the other, right?
Yeah. No, for sure. I think that it kind of came about in two ways, right? So once again, I said that, I came from Utah, where competition was lighter when compared to most of the other states. And I came through a really, really good high school wrestling program, but it was kind of on its tail end when
Mhm.
I was getting in. And I was at a higher level than most of the guys. And so I remember, you know, I was, I have ADHD, and so I can't really I would get bored. And so my way of like making practice fun is I would go, okay, I'm gonna let this guy 60% in, right? Or I'm gonna let this guy 70% in during the live goes, and I'm gonna let this guy 80% in. And I was just like, I just want to see how far can I let them get close before I can get out of it. On top of, scoring my own points. And so I feel like that was where it kind of originated. And I didn't have to use it as much in high school because once again, like I was getting tested 15 times a year, Fargo
Mhm.
and whatever national tournaments I can make it to. And even then, the first three rounds were just a bloodbath. And so
Yeah.
I had it always kind of in the bag. If you watch me and Sammy back in the day, both of us were doing, crazy stuff on those Fargo finals matches. But um, when I got to Nebraska and then when I got to, working out with Tervel was really huge at not necessarily like, hey, you have all of these characteristics and you know how to do a lot of these things. Here's a direction. Here's
Ah,
you make the defense, you know, a system. And so Tervel was huge in that. And you see that even with a lot of our Nebraska guys is, you watch Peyton Robb from freshman, sophomore year, very, very clean baseline defense. And then his junior, senior year, he still had that baseline defense, but he also had a level of, you know, he can lock in the crotch and kind of wiggle his way out of things and get in the split, stuff like that.
dude. Okay, you're kind of blowing my mind right now. How do you systemize scrambling. That's really hard to do.
Yeah, so it is tough, and I think that like, we've had to work a lot on it. We do a lot of positional wrestling, and the greatest way we like to describe it is we like to say I like to think of it as like a funnel, right? So there's so much wrestling that can happen. You have to be like, okay, I'm gonna force it all to this position. And so, you know, for me, if I'm in on a leg, I'm gonna funnel my wrestling to a crackdown most of the time. That's where I like to wrestle. For defense, I want to funnel them into a single leg where I kind of have the lock. And so if they're low on my ankle, I'm going to kick out, turn, and kind of let them up my leg to then it can kind of work again, right? And so it's kind of like you're just always trying to force them. And there's like lots of, nitty gritty stuff. And there is a level of aspect of it. It's like, hey, now you just have to be creative because he's on in on it a little bit different or he's moving a little bit different. And so, but yeah, it's like I want to get back to this position.
Oh, that's awesome. Dude, here's why it's awesome. Because single leg defense for Brock Hardy is going to look extremely different than single leg defense for your 25 pounder or whatever. Give a different body shape. Like
Yeah.
forget about like weight, just a different body type. Golly, that's hard to teach.
Yeah, so that's the thing is, so it's like, how can you find where you want to be? So I might want to be somewhere different, but like, part of the reason why Jacob Van D can hit everyone with a Jonesy is because I will shoot a double leg up through the body, and somehow he has funneled me into a single leg, and I'm getting Jonesied.
Wow.
It's kind of like, you'll see the same thing. Antrell Taylor, you'll shoot whatever shot on him, and all of a sudden he's in that position where you got his foot up and you cannot take him down. You can
Good
put,
luck.
yeah, good luck.
Yeah, no, so it's funny because I get to spend a lot of time with Steve Neal. He's right down the street, and he talks about that in the hand fight
Yeah.
all the time, right? Like I don't want to be in your underhook. I'm out of there, you know. So, and he's always funneling back to his right hand collar, and you're just taking that and flipping it towards defense. And
Yeah.
is that a product of Tervel?
Yeah, it's definitely, I would definitely think that that's, I would say that the coaches definitely, Snyder and Manning definitely worked on that. And, I think that James did it naturally without even being coached. But it was definitely, the idea of this funnel. And then, some of the current systems that I kind of use are definitely from Tervel.
Hmm. So Joel is coming in from the Peter Gallery saying, can you kind of describe how you figure out the situation that you want to funnel towards?
Yes. I think that, at the end of the day, you want to wrestle the position that you've wrestled the most, right? Like, where have you spent all of your time practicing? And then that now that you've worked on your baseline, get into a practice setting, just drilling and have your partner. I mean, this is a huge part of all wrestling is having a good partner that can, you know, throw the kitchen sink in different ways of putting you in different positions and, always feeling your way back to, the where you would prefer to be and where you want to be. And then, there's a lot of like little tricks that Tervel teaches and Snyder teaches that are like, oh, time to reset, do this, right? Even in, like I said, this could be being taught at other places because, there's a video of Kale. I remember, I think somebody posted it like literally when I was coming home from my mission that it was like Kale was extended and he was like, oh, I'd rather be in single leg defense than extended on a single. So he just kind of like fed his leg, switched it over, and all of a sudden he's in the better position, right? Of kind of that situation. So I think that like these other guys, these other teams are doing it too. They just you gotta. It's a lot of practice and a lot of feel.
Man, that's tough. It's one of the things that both excites me and frustrates the holy heck out of me about
Yeah,
the sport because I'm an old dude and I don't know anything. Like I don't know I know no, like every time I
Kruger
get
effect.
with like
The more you learn, the more you. don't know.
Oh, I know nothing. Like it's so easy to say. It's like, oh, yeah, I know nothing. And it's funny. I learn from kids, but yeah, it's just this constant reminder of like how intricate this sport is. Like there's just, everyone talks about playing chess. Well, yeah, but this is like 4D chess, right? Like the pressure is literally coming from every single angle. And it's really, really challenging, man. And that's one of the things that we love about this sport. All right, let's kind of move on though. What has to happen for Nebraska to knock off Penn State?
Um, so this past year we took second, and I was telling people that like I think that this wasn't our best team since I've been on the team. Um, in the sense that like, I think if in head-to-head matchups with my freshman team and my sophomore team, I think that, it would be a toss-up every time of which team would win. And I remember just thinking this year at NCAA is like, so like Silas did an All-American his freshman sophomore year. And I remember he hit his his two blood round losses back to back years were NCAA finalists. With his freshman year being Iowa NCAA finalist, what's his name? Uh,
You could say it, I probably would know, but doesn't matter too much.
yeah, yeah. So anywho, so like I remember thinking like Silas had this bad luck, and then this year, you know, it's his blood round matchup. We're like, that's great. We love that, right?
Mhm.
Comparative to an NCAA finalist.
Of course, of course, of course, of course.
Wrestling a dog, but he was wrestling not an
Yeah.
NCAA finalist. And I think that like I kept thinking that the same like Vandy. Oh, I love that matchup. And I remember freshman sophomore year, it was like, dude,
Really.
that's who he's got to beat to be an All
Oof,
American. Are you
oof,
kidding
yeah.
me? The NCAA champ got upset, and now that's who he has. And so I even feel that. I mean, that's something that's been so incredible about Penn State's run is that like if it feels like a lot of times everything that needs to go right does for them, and it feels
Mhm.
like for the past couple of years that that's not been the case for most other teams. Um, and so I don't think it was luck of necessarily how things happened this year, but there's a certain level of we have to take advantage of every opportunity we have, to score points and to you know and I think in a way it's got to be a team effort from every
Mhm.
team that's not wearing blue and white.
Sure, sure. No, there's no question, right? And that's where you're talking about the luck kind of comes into it for sure.
Yeah.
You
Like
know,
that's yeah, not necessarily luck, but like, this got to be,
you
we
can't control it.
got
It's
to have
luck.
everything that we can control go right,
Right.
and then everyone else has got to take control a little bit too. And I think that, at the end of the day, Penn State has done what they've done because they put as many guys in the finals as you can think of. You go, how many are you going to put in the finals? Five. They put seven. Um, and they extract the best out of their guys at the right time, and we have to do
You
this.
say time, and everyone says you gotta peak for 3 days in March. One of the things that I've found unbelievable about, and I'm not just here tooting the Penn State horn. I just it has to be said, their ability to peak for session four
Yeah,
is uncanny. It's uncanny. So like when people say, "Oh, you gotta peak in March," well, that's dumb because when in March? Because if you do it in March 31st, it doesn't help you very much.
yeah,
Well, and then people say, "Well, you got to focus for 3 days in March for the NCAA tournament." Maybe. But what if you blow it all on the first day?
yeah,
Like they are so honed in to session four. It is unbelievable to me.
yeah. Well, I mean, so even so, my sophomore year, we had five All-Americans, and we took seventh place. We had the second most All-Americans. We took seventh place, but it was because the margin of Penn State and everyone else isn't necessarily made in, you know, it isn't made day one, day two. It's made the end of day two and all of day three, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that was
Yeah.
this year. They had, do you know how incredible it is to take third that many times with that many guys? Because third is really freaking hard.
Way harder. Way
Taking second
harder.
and I've taken third. Third's harder.
Yeah.
Third's harder.
Way harder.
Way harder. And so that's something that so many other teams, and this is maybe the expectation that they set. I see it on my team, and I get frustrated that they win the blood round match and it's over.
That's
Tournaments,
it. Yeah.
hey, I'm an All-American.
Yeah.
Because if we're being real, no one notices from an outside's perspective, an All-American can be second place to eighth. They're all the same to a lot, to an average viewer, to the accolade that gets written down on the paper.
Hmm.
Second to eighth is the same thing. And the relief is lifted and they're no longer wrestling with that edge. And
Hmm.
I my freshman year, I did the semi slide. Um, but then, the year that I took third, I was wrestling with a little bit more piss and vinegar because of, some stuff that had happened. And so that we had that little bit of that this year, right? Um,
Yeah.
and that on top of that, same thing happens in the semifinals. You become a semifinalist and you go, I'm an
An
All-American.
All-American.
I can lose,
Congrats.
and I've done it. So now I can just wrestle free. Wrestling free isn't what makes Penn State great, right? That isn't what has made some of their guys that they're like, you know what? I'm an All-American now, so now I can just wrestle how I want. That was never their goal. And that can't be, if we're gonna take them down, that can't be our goal of just, well, I did the low bar, so now I can wrestle free. No, the low bar and the high bar should always be the same. So that way, I mean, that was I think the difference for me this year in the semifinals is that it was like I don't care that
I'm not done yet.
I'm not done yet, right? And like the pressure that you feel, there shouldn't be a pressure release. Pressure makes us better athletes most of the time. Obviously, it can be too much, but like I loved Kyle Dake's quote when he won his third or fourth, and he said, pressure is what makes the diamond.
Hmm.
So if you relieve the pressure from yourself, you're gonna wrestle like you do in practice, which yeah, maybe good in some days, but we all lose in practice all the time because we do something stupid or because, there's no care, there's no, you know,
There's no oomph behind it, right? Like there's no.
yeah, like anxiety and pressure make Tom Brady, right? Anxiety and pressure make the greatest athletes who they are because, they always feel it, yet they always hone it and they always, harness it. And so, yeah, I think that can be the difference maker is that, instead of this year, if we get six or seven or eight All-Americans, you know, it's got to be between fifth or better. That's
Mhm.
that's how you beat Penn State, I think. That's how Ohio State did it, if I remember correctly. They
Sure.
had a lot of good guys on the backside. That's how Iowa did it. It's that's the points. That's
Yeah.
the points.
That's amazing. Amazing. All right. That's such great insight. Thank you. All right, we're gonna wrap it up here with our sprint. Try not to think too much about these answers. Just fire away as quickly as you can. What is the greatest wrestling shoe of all time?
I would say the best shoe in the sense that I wear it classically, combat speeds. But
Amen. Amen.
but they're technically not the best shoe. But they are the
Okay.
greatest. Does that makes sense? They're the greatest shoe.
Okay. All right. Well, you got to give me a differentiation.
Well, I mean, like Tom Brady's the greatest quarterback of all time, but if we're being like real about who has the best skills as a quarterback, you'd say, Aaron Rodgers or Drew Brees or whatever. So
Okay.
I would say the Adidas Combat Speed doesn't have the greatest grip, and the current material is a little clothy, gets a little sweaty and nasty.
Sure.
Um, but they're perfect in the sense
Yeah.
that they have sufficient grip, they're sufficiently light, and they're sufficiently comfortable, which no other shoe has all three.
I like that. That is a well thought answer, sir. Okay. If we could sum this podcast up and all the things we talked about, whether it be the recruiting, whether it be the mission, whether it be your development of your style, anything like give me a book recommendation that you could give to young athletes that kind of gives them a peek under the hood of Brock Hardy.
Book recommendation. Hmm, that is really good. Um, I'm blanking. Uh, uh, I feel like there was a book I read when I was a kid called Wrestle Tough or something like that. It,
Okay.
it was a book made for wrestlers, and it just
Okay.
filled with stories of old wrestlers. I would just
Really?
I would just go read that because there's like the amount of wisdom, there's a lot of stuff that's baloney. But there is
Yeah.
so much like random goodness, and I feel like the key to making yourself great isn't one particular thing, but rather you need to make yourself by, molding everything else that's going on.
Oh, nice. Joel Shaw for the
Yeah.
win.
Yes. So yeah, like I don't think that everything in there is great, but at the same time, I feel like what made me a great wrestler is I have tried to be a leech off of every great person I've met and every great wrestler I've met.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay. Um, all right. You only get four. They got to be American.
Rushmore.
Who is on your Mount Rushmore of wrestling?
Oh, I mean, this is gonna probably be boring. I'm gonna put JB on there.
Hmm.
Um, he's a freak. I can't believe everything that he's done at the weight that he's done it as. The dominance is incredible. I'm gonna put Baumgartner.
Love it.
Just numbers, man. That's
Yeah.
crazy. 13 years, was it?
13. 13.
Um, I'm gonna put Kale on there
Hmm.
because collegiately incredible, Olympic gold medalist, and then on top of that, no one wants to talk about it, but his 2013 fifth place is insane.
Unbelievable.
That's
Unbelievable.
insane.
Just fifth place in the world. No big deal. Like
Not
what?
my weight class, not his weight class, by the way.
Yeah. Why not? Yeah.
He
Why
probably should
not?
have gone Varner's weight class. Um, Okay, the fourth one is the hardest one because there's so many different options, right? Like, because, you know,
Hmm.
John Smith, so many golds. You also have Dan Gable, revolutionary for the sport. You kind of have these current guys, Dake, David, and Kyle, and, Jaden Cox. So many, so many, so many great wrestlers. But I think I'm gonna put kind of a weird one on here, but I feel like because of the influence that he had on the sport. I'm gonna say Bobby Douglas.
Oh, I like that one. Not his first time on our list, by the way. I'm pretty sure other people have had him on the list. That is a dude from now. I did not get to spend much time with Coach Douglas at all, but
Mhm.
from what I understand, one of the greatest wrestling minds of all time.
Yes, so that's what I was gonna say is because he is the only he coached the only ever national championship team west of the Missouri. Is that
Who's
the no? Is that the right
yeah.
thing? No, it's not west of Missouri because Oklahoma State's west of Missouri, but it's west. The Western United
Yeah, yeah,
States.
yeah. Not
I'm a
not
Western guy.
yeah.
That's incredible that we was able to do it over here because I think we get forgotten a lot. He also, they talk about, the incredible things that he did to, help Kale. And then, if you go back and look, dude was nice in his day.
Dude was for real. Dude
Dude was
was for real. No question. That is a great list.
You
All
join
right.
you join Tony Roby and your club coach Kyler Sanderson with
Oh, that's
Bobby
cool.
Douglas.
We've had Kyler on the podcast. Did not know that. I gotta start paying attention more.
Episode 102. We'll link it below.
Sure. Really?
like I said, I love how John Smith wrestles, and I
Of
think
course.
any given day,
But you only get four.
I only get four, and um, hopefully John doesn't hear this. I mean, I don't really know John, but hopefully he doesn't hear this.
He's
Who's
a
the other?
competitive son of a gun. He'd be
Hopefully,
pissed.
hopefully Dan doesn't hear this.
Eh, I
I
think
mean,
he's
probably
probably
he
he'd
probably
probably all right with it. All right. Last one. You got a magic wand. You get to change one thing about the sport of wrestling, and it changes tomorrow. What would you change?
Oh, that is a great question. Can I do one per style? Because
Sure.
because freestyle, get rid of passivity, please. No, actually
Okay.
not passivity. I would just wave the wand, refs stop stopping matches. That's just I don't want I'm so sick of freestyle. Mid hand fight, and like us as wrestlers know that mid hand fight anything can happen and they go, dude.
Yo, you know what gets me the
uh,
worst? When they start slapping
yes,
us.
it's just like, dude,
Bro, I will headbutt you. You need to stop.
let these dudes wrestle. Folk style. Um, so this is tough. I love top wrestling so much. But I hate with all of my being dudes that just sit on top and get
Yeah,
their fighting time point.
sure.
And so, and then, and push them out of bounds, and
Yes.
waste time, waste time.
So you hate
Score
PA,
points,
is what
man.
you're saying.
Score points, man. So I would say your riding time point does not count unless you have a turn.
Oh, I like that. I like that. I like that.
Because then it's not, you weren't riding, you were just holding on, man.
Oh, that's pretty easy to do. Like that's a like that could literally like a lot of the stuff that we get, like, oh, change freestyle to folk style or folk style to freestyle, whatever. Yeah, that takes a lot. That takes some doing. Like there's a lot of wheels that have to go in the same direction in order for that to happen. But I think most people would get on board with the idea of just like, hey, you didn't earn your riding time point if you didn't turn them.
Yeah, it was just holding on. You didn't ride. Well, that's the thing is it's like it's riding like turn people, man. Nothing is better than watching good top wrestling that's like Ridge Lovett just
Oh,
breaking someone, Zane
filthy.
Rutherford, freaking, the it's awesome, but
Yeah. Like the list goes on, but guys that are actually, and they'll give up escape points every once in a while because Evan Wick jumped to a cradle and
yeah,
just a second too soon. Okay, well, friggin' fine. That's
right
fine.
stuff,
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah. And then Greco, I think that Greco should just I feel like you you've got to be able to they got to get rid of this top thing. I think that Greco actually needs to be like infinite overtime sort of thing and let
Can I
points.
take it a step further? And like, or maybe retract a step. I think it's the step out rule that kills them. Everybody's trying to get close to the edge,
Yeah.
and I think, because of that, nobody wants to take a risk because they
Yeah, I
could
mean,
get a shot on top.
I mean, it's just like the problem they're having with football right now is that the tush push is so successful and so easy that they do it, but it's not very fun to watch. The
No,
easiest point to score in Greco is a push out
yeah,
and or get on top
right,
by looking like you're doing more. So
sure,
those two things are not fun to watch. Why people don't watch it.
yeah,
So you have to incentivize the thing that, you know, may be
yeah,
hard, but is good to watch. That's how you make a sport fun to watch. Like
yeah.
top wrestling, just sitting on top, no one wants to see that.
So it's a
But it's an
bore.
easy point, so you have to be good at it. You have to be good at holding on. So they're like, get your free point, get your free riding time point, and you
You
see,
should wrestle, dude. You should wrestle. Once you're done, you should wrestle in this claw thing. I'm telling you, dude, they're forcing the action on top.
yeah, I
Like
like,
it's like they're adamant about it. Like they're telling their officials, if he's hanging on, you're banging him for stalling. Like whereas like just kind of riding the hips, that's not enough. Like you can't just hang on, right? Yeah,
have to.
I'm doing an event this weekend for Claw, and they are like, we had a rules meeting with a couple of the officials, and they were like, if the thought enters your brain of stalling, hit him for stalling.
Mm, I like that.
But anyway, all right, I digress. Thank you very much for coming on. I truly appreciate it. This was the best interview I've ever had with a student athlete, and it's not even
I
close. It's
I
not
appreciate
close.
that. Thank you so much.
That's
Thank you.
wonderful. All right, brother. Thanks so much for coming on. We'll talk to y'all soon. See you.
Thanks for having me on, man. We'll see you.
Later, brother.
Welcome to the Athletor podcast.
Wait. Don't go anywhere before you hit that next button. If you enjoyed listening to this episode, do us a huge favor. Click that subscribe button. And if you're so inclined, leave a review and share it.